I want to talk about are you in the dynamic in your love life, in your relationship, in your marriage. What I mean by the dynamic is there is one person craving intimacy while the other person is actively avoiding it, thus igniting a chaser-runner dynamic. This can show up in attachment styles we are familiar through previous conversations, through anxious avoidant, and how some of these cycles can become so deeply ingrained and embedded in the relationship dynamic or in what we seek out in dating, finding certain qualities and characteristics in others that do not serve us really attractive, thus not creating enough opportunity for a different way, for a different sort of perspective and way of moving through a relationship to make its way through. So to talk about this a little bit more, the pursuer is craving reassurance and intimacy through connection, so they are pursuing that, they are pushing for that connection to occur. The polar or the runner is actively avoiding it because they feel overwhelmed, they feel flooded by it, they need that alone time to regulate, and they need that sense of safety through getting away from this energy and getting away from this pressure. And so these two work very much against each other, because the more the anxious component of their relationship pushes, the more it ignites the pulling dynamic of the person that is trying to regulate through being alone with themselves or through trying to just find that sense of breath and stability and freedom again. So the more the puller is distancing themselves, the more it activates the other person to push even harder. And so how do we break this cycle? It takes a high level of discipline, of consciousness and awareness to break the cycle, and it can be done. And if you can be strong enough and aware enough and conscious enough and really awaken to these tendencies within you, you have so much power to transform your love life and to transform the level of intimacy that is available to you in all stages of love. So let's dive into this. Number one, recognize that the cycle needs to change, not necessarily him. So it can be easy to say you need to change, you need to do this, you need to show up, you need to develop this bandwidth, but it's the cycle that needs to change. And by looking at it as the cycle that needs to change, we stop making our partner the enemy, we stop making them bad or wrong or this guy that needs to figure it out, and it shows a deeper level of respect, which of course changes our energy. So we can look at the dynamic and say, okay, this needs to change, so how can I start supporting real change in the patterns that he and I have deeply embedded or have become addicted to for coping with any sort of turbulence or discomfort or disagreement in relationship? The way that we begin to do this is we really ask ourselves, okay, where can I show up differently? In this moment he is clearly, for example, asking for peace, or he is clearly not feeling safe or responding to me, kind of pushing hard. Where can I pull myself out of it, recognizing that it won't always be me doing all of the work, but since I see the dynamic and since I see what's going on, where can I make a different choice? And as you empower yourself to do this, you're giving yourself the gift of restoring dignity, becoming high value again, because it doesn't feel good to push when the other person's not open to it, but it also invites him to see maybe things can be different. That was not as intense, we didn't go down that road the same way. So it starts to infuse a level of hope and possibility into the exchanges and into the relationship as a whole that wasn't available before. So how can you show up for yourself in this way? Is number one. Number two, is it worth it? Pay attention, turn inward for a minute. Is it worth it? Is me reacting to whatever emotional experience that I'm having, is it worth it right now? Where has this typically led me? Where is this likely to lead me today? Is this going to cost me a high level of intimacy by demanding that he do things or show up for me in this way in my time frame? Only you can answer these questions, but you want to be really ruthlessly honest with yourself, so you are setting yourselves up for success. Because if we want to change the structure and the dynamic of a relationship, we have to be willing to face that discomfort and to move through it in a way that is very and perhaps very unnatural for ourselves, recognizing that by changing and taking responsibility for ourselves, we create the best opportunity to grow something new. So by asking yourself if it's worth it, and by recognizing the level of intimacy that's going to cost you or the level of recovery that it's going to cost you, it helps you make better and better aligned decisions. Number three, this practice of one and two will eventually lead you to merge together to form a new way. So for example, when my husband and I were Healing our dynamic styles early in our marriage when I chose to kind of be the change that I wanted to see in the relationship, and I would kind of pull myself out of the anxious tendencies that I had. He really saw this. He would recognized silently that was hard for her. She does not typically do that. He saw me show up as messy as it was. He really saw me show up and try my very best to invite something new in, and as a result what happened was that softened his heart. He's a good person and he saw that wasn't easy for her. How can I also take ownership of my stuff and start meeting her halfway? And so what happened over time and over the course of our relationship, we've become so good and so natural.